The sandwich probably cost him nothing, but it gave her an empire worth $100 million. Hyun-woo, 12 years old, saw the starving black girl through the chain-link fence behind his Seoul private school. His family had power. His father was a crime lord. His mother counted bruises instead of blessings, but he gave her his lunch anyway. Every day for 6 months. No one asked him to. No one thanked him. He just did it. When she had to run, when the social workers finally found her, Imani made a wild promise. "I'll marry you when I'm strong." He laughed, not because it was silly, but because it was too big to hold. Then she carved his name into wood and wore it around her neck. 15 years vanished. Imani became the architect, ruled New York's underworld with surgical precision. Spent 3 years searching for him, bought properties, hired investigators, transitioned legitimate, found him. Tonight, she'd walk into a community center in Queens. Hyun-woo would be there running from his father's legacy, trying to save people through paperwork. Neither knew they were seconds away from collision. Before we dive into how a wealthy boy's kindness created a female crime boss and why the woman who built an empire for him is everything he's trying to escape, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story goes places you won't expect, and you'll want to see what happens next. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you've ever made a promise you spent years trying to keep. Now settle in because this is going to hurt in the best way. She taught him how to kill without ever touching a blade. Imani Williams, 24 years old, 6 feet of controlled violence wrapped in a custom charcoal suit, stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Manhattan penthouse, watching the city bleed neon into a November sky that couldn't decide between rain and snow. Her knuckles were still bruised from this morning's training. Muay Thai with her instructor, then an hour of Krav Maga because some nights the only thing that stopped the nightmares was exhaustion so complete her body couldn't sustain consciousness long enough to dream. The wooden pendant around her neck, carved with Korean characters she'd traced so many times the edges had smoothed into curves, rested against her collarbone like a brand. Kang Hyun-woo, the boy who'd saved her life 15 years ago in Seoul by teaching her the only lesson that mattered. Never be powerless again. Her phone vibrated. Marcus, her second in command. "We found him." 3 words. 15 years of searching distilled into a text message that made her hand shake just enough that she had to set down the whiskey she'd been holding. "Where?" She typed back. "Queens. Korean Community Center. Works as a social worker. Goes by William Kong now." The glass in her hand cracked. She'd been gripping it too hard, and now blood mixed with expensive scotch, dripping onto marble floors that cost more than most people earned in a year. Imani didn't notice. She was remembering a fence in Seoul. A boy with scared eyes and steady hands passing her stolen food through chain link, whispering in halting English, "Find pattern. Everyone has weakness. Never show yours." He'd taught her to survive. His father had taught her to conquer. And now, after 15 years, she was going to keep the promise she'd made when she was 9 years old and stupid enough to believe love could save anyone. She was going to marry him, whether he wanted her to or not. Seoul 15 years earlier, and the rain fell like it had been falling since the beginning of time, cold and gray and relentless, the kind of rain that soaked through cheap shoes and stayed in your bones for days. Imani Williams was 9 years old and dying slowly on the streets of a country that didn't want her, couldn't understand her, had no systems in place to catch a black American girl who'd fallen through every bureaucratic crack after her father died in a training accident, and her mother's mind broke so completely the military hospital kept her sedated while the embassy figured things out. Nobody figured anything out. Imani learned Korean by listening to shopkeepers shout at her to leave, learned to steal by watching other street kids, learned to sleep in places where rain couldn't reach and men didn't look, learned that hunger was something you could ignore until you couldn't anymore, until your vision started tunneling and your hands stopped working right and you found yourself sitting behind a fence at a private school watching kids eat lunch you'd never taste. That's where Hyun-woo found her. Or maybe she found him. Either way, their eyes met through chain link on a Tuesday in November, and something fundamental shifted in both their worlds. He was 12, Korean, wealthy in ways she couldn't conceptualize yet, standing on the manicured side of the fence in a school uniform that probably cost more than her father's military salary had been for a month. He had the kind of face that hadn't decided what it would become yet, soft and serious, with eyes that looked like they'd seen things kids shouldn't see. She must have looked like death. Stick-thin, hair matted, clothes that had been stolen from a donation bin behind a church 3 weeks ago. Face probably gray with cold and hunger and exhaustion that went deeper than sleep could fix. They stared at each other for 30 seconds that felt like an hour. Then he walked away. Amani didn't cry. She'd stopped crying weeks ago. Crying used energy she didn't have. She just sat there, back against the fence, trying to remember what food tasted like, trying to remember anything except the present moment that was slowly killing her. The next day he came back, walked right up to the fence during what looked like a supervised recess, bodyguards standing 20 feet away, not quite watching him, not quite not watching. He pulled a container from his bag. Rice, meat, vegetables still warm. Passed it through the chain link without a word. She stared at it. He stared at her. "Eat," he said in Korean. She didn't understand the word yet, but she understood the gesture. She ate so fast she choked, coughing rice onto the ground, and he waited patiently while she finished, then passed through a bottle of water. When she was done, he said something in Korean she didn't catch, then in halting English, "Tomorrow." Same. Then he left. That was how it started. Every day for 6 months, Hyun-woo brought her food. Elaborate meals his family's kitchen prepared that his father never ate. His mother made with the desperate care of someone trying to hold a dissolving family together through the universal language of feeding people. He brought her his sister's old coat when winter came early and brutal. Brought her books in English when he figured out she could read. Brought her a journal and told her in improving English, "Write what you see. Patterns. People move in patterns. Learn patterns, you survive." She learned he was the son of Kang Tae-min, a name she didn't understand the weight of yet. Learned his father was important in ways that made people afraid. Learned Hyun-woo hated the importance, hated the fear, hated everything about the gilded cage he lived in. Learned his older sister was planning to run away. Learned his mother cried in the garden when she thought no one was watching. Learned that wealth didn't mean safety, that prison bars came in many forms, that the boy feeding her was just as trapped as she was, just in a prettier cage. He taught her to observe. That man. They're walking. Watch. She watched. What you see. He's looking around a lot? Yes. Nervous. Why nervous? I don't know. Look at hands. Hands always tell truth. She looked. The man's hands were clenched, opening and closing rhythmically. He's scared of something. Yes. Now watch where he goes. Pattern tells story. The man walked into a shop, came out fast, walked different, looser. He was late paying protection money, Hyun-woo said. Now paid. Now safe until next time. Everything is pattern. Learn pattern, predict behavior. Predict behavior, never surprised. Never surprised, never powerless. She wrote it all down in the journal. Not the words exactly, but the lessons underneath. Find the pattern. Identify the weakness. Never show yours. Position yourself where you can see threats coming. Make yourself useful to powerful people. Observe everything. Trust nothing. These weren't lessons a 12-year-old should know, should teach, but Hyun-woo had been raised by a father who believed power was the only language the world spoke, and he'd absorbed the grammar even while hating the accent. Then his father found out. She never knew how. Maybe the guards noticed. Maybe the cook reported missing food. Maybe Hyun-woo got careless, desperate to help her more. Either way, one evening in May, she was waiting at the fence and heard shouting from inside the school building. Korean, rapid-fire, angry. Then she saw him. Kang Tae-min. She didn't know that's who he was yet. Just saw a man in an expensive suit dragging Hyun-woo by the arm, shouting in his face while Hyun-woo's head stayed down, taking it, absorbing it like rain. Then Tae-min hit him, open-handed across the face, hard enough that Hyun-woo's head snapped sideways. Amani stood up, pressed against the fence, unable to help, unable to look away. A woman ran out, older, elegant, terrified. Hyun-woo's mother. She got between them, speaking fast and urgent, and Tae-min shoved her. She fell. Hyun-woo lunged. At 12, lunged at his father, screaming something Imani didn't understand, and Taemin caught him easily, dragged him toward a black car. But before they reached it, a girl ran out. Teenager, 16 maybe, with Hyunwoo's eyes and their mother's face. His sister. She was screaming too, crying, pulling at their father's arm. And for just a second, Taemin let go of Hyunwoo to deal with her. That's when Hyunwoo looked at the fence. Looked right at Imani. Their eyes met. She saw everything in his face. Shame, fear, rage, resignation, and something else. Something that looked like goodbye. She did the only thing she could think of. Shouted in broken Korean, English, anything. I come back. I get strong. I marry you. We leave together. The words of a 9-year-old who didn't understand marriage meant anything except people choosing each other, promising each other, not being alone anymore. Hyunwoo's expression cracked. For just a second, something that might have been hope. Then his father dragged him into the car, and the sister ran in a different direction, and the mother stayed on the ground crying, and Imani stood at the fence until long after the car disappeared, until security came and chased her away, until she had to run or be caught. She never saw him again. The fence was reinforced the next day. She waited there every morning for 2 weeks, but no one came. Later, she heard from other street kids that the sister had been found dead, that the family had left Seoul, that Kang Taemin's empire was expanding in ways that required his full attention, which meant his soft son would have to be hardened or discarded. She carved Hyunwoo's name in Korean into a piece of wood she found, wore it on a string around her neck, promised herself that someday, when she was strong enough, she'd find him. She'd keep her promise, even if it took her whole life. If you're wondering how a starving 9-year-old survives long enough to become powerful, smash that like button, because the next part of the story is where Imani learns exactly what strength costs, and it's not what you think. 3 years on Seoul streets taught Imani that survival was just slow-motion dying unless you learned to take instead of receive. She got good at stealing, better at fighting, best at recognizing which adults were dangerous in ways that would kill you fast versus ways that would kill you slow. She avoided the slow ones. The fast ones, at least you saw coming. At 11, she got caught anyway. Not by police. By men who spoke Korean and broken English and other languages she didn't recognize. Who trafficked girls to places Imani's brain protected her from fully understanding even as it was happening. She was in a container ship for 6 days. Learned 17 girls' names. Watched 3 of them stop responding to anything. Learned that the pattern of guard rotations shifted every 8 hours. Learned that the lock on the container was old, pickable if you had something metal and flexible in time. She had time. She made the something metal from a torn piece of the container's interior lining. It took 3 days of working in the dark while other girls slept or cried or stopped doing either. On the 6th night, she picked the lock. Waited until the rotation shift gap when guards were changing. 30 seconds of chaos. Ran. Didn't look back to see if anyone followed. Ran through a shipyard in a port she didn't recognize, in a country she didn't know, until her legs gave out behind a warehouse where she hid in a shipping crate full of machine parts and finally cried, because she'd survived again and didn't know how many times she could keep surviving before there was nothing left of her to save. An American military chaplain found her 3 days later. He was at the port on assignment, heard crying, found a traumatized 11-year-old who barely spoke, and through the military diplomatic bureaucratic machinery that had failed her before, got her back to the United States. Foster care in New York. 5 placements in 3 years because she was difficult, which meant traumatized, which meant she fought when cornered, ran when trapped, trusted nothing and no one. At 14, she ran from the 5th placement. Lived on New York streets with skills learned in Seoul, American English, and a rage that burned steady and cold. At 16, she met him. She was stealing from a restaurant dumpster behind a Korean barbecue place in Flushing when the back door opened and a man stepped out. Older, 50s, Korean, wearing a suit that cost more than a car, flanked by 2 younger men who radiated violence the way furnaces radiate heat. She froze. They stared at each other. Then the man spoke in Korean. "You're hungry." It wasn't a question. She didn't answer. He switched to English, barely accented. "Come inside. Eat." Every instinct screamed run. But she was so tired of running, tired of being hungry, tired of surviving just to survive again tomorrow. So she followed him inside. He fed her. Proper meal, restaurant closed for the night, just her and him and the two violent men standing guard at the door. He watched her eat with an expression she couldn't read. When she finished, he said, "You're smart. I can see it. You survived things that would kill most people." She didn't respond. "I can teach you to do more than survive. I can teach you to win." That's how Imani Williams, 16 years old and carrying 15 years of trauma, met Kang Tae-min. She didn't know who he was at first, just knew he was powerful, dangerous, and offering her something no one ever had. Not charity, not pity, not foster care's condescending version of help. He was offering her weaponry. He taught her everything. Not kindness, not fatherhood, but strategy, structure, the architecture of power, and how to build it brick by methodical brick. He taught her that violence was a tool, to be used precisely or not at all. That fear was leverage. That money was just crystallized power. That information was more valuable than either. That loyalty was purchased through competence, not affection. That she reminded him of someone. He never said who. Years later, she'd understand. She was everything his son refused to be. For 3 years, Kang Tae-min built Imani into something that should have been monstrous but came out cold and brilliant instead. He gave her resources to finish her GED, then community college business classes, not because he valued education but because legitimate businesses made the best fronts. He gave her access to his network, let her observe operations, tested her with small responsibilities that grew larger. He never touched her inappropriately, never pretended to care about her beyond her utility. She found that honesty refreshing after a lifetime of people who claimed to care and disappeared. By 19, she was running 3 of his operations. Money laundering through commercial real estate, information brokering for corporate espionage, tech security consulting that was really hacking for hire. She was good at all of it. Better than good. She saw patterns Tae-min's other people missed. Built systems that were elegant, efficient, almost impossible to trace. At 20, Kang Tae-min told her about his son. They were in his office going over quarterly reports when he said, "I had a son once. Brilliant mind, weak heart. He could have built an empire. Instead, he destroyed mine." Imani looked up from the spreadsheet. Tae-min's face was unreadable, but something in his voice was raw. "What happened?" "He testified against me, gave the Korean government everything they needed to indict me. I had to leave Seoul, lost half my network, rebuilt here, but it cost me everything that mattered." He looked at Imani. "My daughter died trying to escape me. My wife killed herself. My son betrayed me. You know what I learned?" She waited. "Blood means nothing. Loyalty is built, not born. You've been more of an heir than he ever was." The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like acid. Because she'd spent 4 years learning from Kang Tae-min, and only now realized she'd been learning from the man who'd destroyed Hyun-woo's family. The man who'd beaten a 12-year-old boy for showing kindness. The man whose empire had killed Hyun-woo's sister and mother. She wore Hyun-woo's name around her neck and had been trained by his monster. When Kang Tae-min died, rival organization, execution style, 3 bullets to the chest in an ambush, he should have seen coming. Imani was 21 and already positioned to absorb portions of his operation. She did it carefully, methodically, using everything he'd taught her. Built her own network separate from his remaining loyalists. Focused on operations with ethical boundaries Tae-min had never bothered with. No drugs, no trafficking, no targeting civilians. She told herself this made her different. She told herself she was using power to protect people who'd been powerless like her. She told herself Hyun-woo would understand. But first, she had to find him. That took 3 more years. Drop a comment right now telling me if Imani is wrong for becoming exactly what destroyed Hyun-woo's family. Or if she's right that power is the only thing that protects people who've been powerless. Because what happens next is going to test everything she believes. The Korean Community Center in Queens was a 3-story brick building that looked like it had been fighting gentrification and losing for about 20 years. Amani stood across the street at 6:47 p.m. on a Wednesday in November, watching through windows where warm light spilled out into early darkness. There was a community meeting happening. She could see maybe 40 people, mostly older Korean immigrants, some younger families, sitting in rows of folding chairs facing a makeshift podium. And there, standing at that podium, was Hyun-woo. Except he went by William now. William Kong. As if changing his name in English could erase who his father had been. He looked different. She'd studied old photos Marcus had pulled from Seoul private school records. Grainy images of a 12-year-old boy with careful eyes and a face that hadn't settled into its bones yet. The man at the podium was 27. Lean in a way that suggested he didn't eat enough or work too much or both. He wore cheap glasses that had definitely been bought at a pharmacy. His hair was longer than Korean professional standards usually allowed, falling over his forehead in a way that made him look younger, uncertain. He wore a button-down shirt that was clean but had been washed so many times the collar had started to fray, and khakis that had that specific worn look of someone who owned 3 pairs and rotated them. He was presenting something, gesturing to a projected slide, and even from across the street, even through glass and distance, Amani could see the nervous energy in his movements, the slight tremor in his hands, the way he kept pushing his glasses up even when they hadn't slipped. This wasn't the boy who'd taught her to observe patterns and find weaknesses. This was someone who'd been broken and put back together wrong. Or maybe right. Maybe this was what healing looked like when you chose it over power. She crossed the street, entered the building through a side door Marcus's people had already unlocked, moved through a hallway that smelled like kimchi and old coffee until she found the meeting room, slipped in the back, stood against the wall. Nobody noticed her immediately. Then Hyun-woo's eyes swept the room during a pause in his presentation, and for a fraction of a second, they landed on her. She was 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit tailored precisely to accommodate her muscular frame. She looked like money and violence had a baby and sent it to business school. She looked like everything his father had been. His eyes moved past her without recognition. Amani felt something crack in her chest. 15 years. She'd spent 15 years surviving, building, searching, keeping a promise he didn't remember making. He'd spent 15 years forgetting her entirely. The presentation continued. He was talking about mental health resources for immigrant families, trauma-informed care, community support systems. His Korean was fluent, but his English was deliberate, careful, like someone translating thoughts on the fly. He was good at this, patient, kind. Everything his father hadn't been. When the meeting ended, people came up to him with questions, problems, requests. He listened to each person like they were the only person in the room, took notes in a worn notebook, promised to look into things, make calls, see what he could do. He had the exhausted competence of someone fighting systems designed to fail people and winning approximately never. Amani waited. Eventually, the crowd thinned. Hyun-woo was packing up his laptop when she approached. William Kong. She used English, American accented. He looked up, started to smile the professional social worker smile, then stopped. Something in his hindbrain recognized danger. Yes? Can I help you? I'd like to volunteer. I have resources that might be useful to your families. He blinked. Oh, we always need volunteers. What kind of resources? Legal connections, financial support. I work in security consulting. All true. Also meaningless without context. That's generous. He pulled out a clipboard with a sign-up sheet. If you fill this out, our coordinator can. I'd prefer to discuss it with you directly. She let her voice drop slightly, added weight to it. Over dinner. His hand stopped moving. He looked at her again, this time actually seeing her. Saw the expensive suit, the watch that cost more than his annual salary, the way she stood like someone who expected the world to rearrange itself around her presence. I'm not sure that's appropriate. Why? You meet with donors regularly, yes. You haven't donated anything yet. I'm offering to, substantially, but I want to understand the organization first. She watched him calculate. Saw the exact moment he decided that turning down potential funding would hurt people who needed help. Okay, there's a place 2 blocks from here that I'll send you an address. Tomorrow night, 7. She pulled out a business card, handed it to him. Heavy stock, minimalist design. Just her name and a phone number. He took it reflexively, looked down. Imani Williams. Pronounced it correctly without asking. She'd listed the Korean phonetic spelling underneath. You're Korean? I lived in Seoul as a child. His eyes sharpened slightly. Your Korean is? Fluent. We can speak it tomorrow if you'd prefer. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or suspicion. Tomorrow, then. Imani turned to leave, then paused. William, that's not your birth name, is it? He went very still. No. What made you change it? I wanted to be someone different. She looked at him for a long moment. Did it work? He didn't answer. She left. Hit subscribe right now because tomorrow night's dinner is where everything Imani plans starts falling apart. And you need to see how a promise made by a 9-year-old destroys two people who just wanted to survive. The restaurant Imani chose was the kind of place where reservations required 3 weeks' notice unless you were the kind of person who made restaurants invent availability. Korean fusion, upscale, the type of lighting that made everyone look like they had secrets worth keeping. Hyun-woo arrived at 6:58, wearing the same frayed collar shirt from yesterday and looking like he'd considered canceling 17 times. Imani was already seated, wearing black this time, simpler, but the watch was still there, the posture was still there, the sense that she'd bought the building they were sitting in and might demolish it after dinner just because she could. He slid into the seat across from her, nervous energy barely contained. This is a lot for a first volunteer meeting. I don't do anything by half. She poured him tea from the pot already on the table. Relax. This isn't an interrogation. Feels like one. Does it? She smiled. Maybe I'm just thorough. They ordered. She noticed he chose the cheapest items, the unconscious calculus of someone who'd been broke long enough that it became reflex. She ordered for both of them in Korean, ignored his protests, picked dishes she knew he'd like if he still had the palate he'd had at 12. When the food came, she watched him try not to react to how expensive everything was, how good it was, how long it had probably been since he'd eaten anything that hadn't been microwaved or delivered in a plastic container. Tell me about the center, she said. What you're really trying to do. He talked, slowly at first, then faster as he found his rhythm. Talked about generational trauma in immigrant communities, about families who'd survived poverty, war, displacement, only to find their children struggling with mental health in a country that stigmatized it. About kids aging out of foster care with no support. About human trafficking victims who needed resources the system refused to provide. He talked like someone who'd seen all of it firsthand, who carried it with him, who couldn't sleep because every person he couldn't help was a personal failure. She listened, really listened, saw the 12-year-old boy who'd fed her through a fence, who'd taught her to observe patterns because he'd wanted her to survive. He'd grown into someone who still wanted people to survive, just through kindness now instead of strategy. You've done this work yourself, he said finally. Been where they are. I can tell. Why do you say that? The way you listen, like you're not just hearing the words, you're remembering. She nodded slowly. I was trafficked at 11. Spent time on the streets before that. Foster care after. System failed me in every language I speak. His face went pale. I'm sorry. Don't be. I survived. Built something from it. What did you build? Power, she said simply. Enough that no one can hurt me again. He frowned. Power doesn't protect you. It isolates you. You sound like you have experience. Ido. He looked down at his tea. My father was powerful. It destroyed everyone who loved him. Something in the air shifted. Imani set down her chopsticks. Tell me about him. Why? Because I'm trying to understand you. Hyun-woo. She couldn't think of him as William. The name didn't fit. Was quiet for a long time. Then, he was a bad man who thought he was practical. Built an empire on violence and called it protection. My sister tried to escape him. She died. My mother couldn't live with what he'd made her complicit in. She died too. And I testified against him. Gave the Korean government everything they needed to destroy him. You feel guilty about that. Every day. He was my father. And I killed his empire. Did you kill him? No. But I made him vulnerable. Someone else finished it. Imani's chest felt too tight. Where is he now? Dead. 3 years ago. Executed by rivals in New York. Her hand trembled. She set down the teacup before he could notice. And you? You came to America after. I came to disappear. To be someone who helps people instead of hurts them. To atone, maybe, for being his son. You're not responsible for his choices. No. But I'm responsible for mine. And I chose to be different. He looked at her. That's why I changed my name. William is who I chose to be. Hyun-woo was who he made me. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. This whole plan, this whole empire, this whole identity she'd built. It was to keep a promise to a boy who'd deliberately killed that version of himself. Who'd chosen kindness over power, atonement over conquest, invisibility over empire. Who'd looked at his father's legacy and burned it to the ground. She'd become that legacy. Imani. His voice was concerned. Are you okay? I need to tell you something. She pulled the wooden pendant from under her shirt. Held it so he could see the characters carved there. Kang Hyun-woo. Kang Hyun-woo. His face went white. Where did you get that? You gave it to me. Not the pendant. The name. You taught me to write it. Taught me to survive. Taught me that patterns matter and weakness is death and power is the only language worth speaking. His hand shook as he reached across the table. Stopped just short of touching the pendant. No. That's not. I don't. Seoul. 15 years ago. Lincoln Elementary. There was a fence. His eyes went impossibly wide. The girl. The American girl. You were. I was starving. You fed me. Every day for 6 months. Taught me to observe, to think strategically, to survive. And when your father found out, when he dragged you away, I promised I'd come back for you when I was strong enough. Tears were streaming down his face. Oh my God. Imani. You were 9. You were just a child. So were you. But I didn't mean. I was just trying to help you survive that moment. I didn't mean for you to build your whole life around. Your father found me. She kept her voice level. In New York. When I was 16. He didn't know who I was. Didn't know I was the girl you'd fed. But he saw something in me. Trained me. Taught me everything he'd tried to teach you. Made me into what you refused to become. Hyun-woo stood up so fast his chair fell backward. No. No, you didn't. Tell me you didn't become. I built an empire. Your father's empire. I absorbed it when he died. Made it better, cleaner, more efficient. I don't traffic people, don't touch drugs, don't hurt civilians. But yes, I'm exactly what he was training you to be. He backed away from the table. You became him. You became the thing that destroyed my family. I became strong enough that no one could destroy me the way your father destroyed your family. That's not strength. That's trauma wearing a suit. People were staring now. She lowered her voice. Sit down. Please. I need to leave. Hyun-woo. Don't call me that. He's dead. I killed him. I chose to kill him. You can't kill who you were. Watch me. He turned and walked out. Imani sat there, surrounded by expensive food no one was eating, wearing the name of a dead boy around her neck, and understood for the first time that maybe power couldn't buy everything. Maybe some promises were better broken. Comment below if you think Imani should have stayed away, or if Hyun-woo is wrong for rejecting the empire she built to protect herself. Because she's not giving up, and what she does next is going to force him to confront everything he's been running from. Hyun-woo didn't sleep that night. He lay in his studio apartment, a space so small you could stand in the center and touch both walls, staring at the ceiling and remembering things he'd spent 15 years trying to forget. A girl with desperate eyes and hands that shook when she took food through a fence. His own voice, young and certain, teaching her lessons his father had beaten into him. Find the pattern. Observe weakness. Never show yours. His father's face when he'd found out. The sound of his mother falling. His sisters screaming. And now that girl had grown into his father. had taken every lesson he'd tried to give her to survive one winter in Seoul and used them to build the exact thing he'd been running from his entire adult life. His phone buzzed at 2 a.m. unknown number. He almost didn't answer. William. Her voice. Don't hang up. How did you get this number? I have resources. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I can help your families. Really help them. Money, legal support, protection. I don't want your blood money. It's not blood money anymore. I laundered it backward. Every dollar is legal now. Clean. Your families don't have to know where it came from. I'll know. And that matters more than actually helping them? He wanted to say yes. Wanted to say his principles mattered more than pragmatism. But he thought about Mrs. Kim, who needed $3,000 for a lawyer to fight her deportation. About the Park family who'd been evicted and were living in their car. About Marcus, the 17-year-old aging out of foster care with nowhere to go. About all the people he saw every day who needed help he couldn't provide with good intentions and grant applications. Why? He asked finally. Why are you doing this? I made you a promise when I was 9 years old. I'm keeping it. That promise was, I know what it was, a child's fantasy, but it was the only thing that kept me alive for 15 years. Let me keep it. Please. He closed his eyes. I can't be what you want me to be. I'm not asking you to be anything. I'm asking you to let me help people you care about. That's all. No. It's not all. You want something from me. Silence. Then quietly, yes. I want you to see that power isn't what destroyed your family. Powerlessness was. Your father was violent and cruel, but I'm not. I built something different. Something that protects people instead of exploiting them. You're lying to yourself. Maybe. But my lies feed people. House them. Keep them safe from predators worse than me. What do your principles do? They let me sleep at night. Do they? Because you sound like someone who doesn't sleep much. She was right. He hated that she was right. I need time to think. Take it. But think about this. How many people have to suffer because you're too proud to accept help from someone with a complicated past? She hung up. Hyun-woo lay there until dawn, not thinking about her question at all. He started seeing her everywhere after that. Not literally. She didn't follow him. But suddenly there were miracles happening at the center. Mrs. Kim's lawyer called with good news. Someone had paid his retainer, and the immigration judge had mysteriously become more sympathetic. The Park family's car got towed, but they found an apartment waiting for them. First month's rent paid. Lease in their name, completely legal. Marcus got accepted to a vocational program that was supposedly full, with a full scholarship that supposedly didn't exist. Hyun-woo knew who was behind it. Knew and couldn't stop it and hated how relieved he was every time another impossible problem got solved. She showed up at the center 2 weeks later. Walked in during evening hours when he was helping a teenager fill out college applications. Sat in the back, waited. He ignored her for an hour. She didn't move, didn't pull out her phone, just sat there with the patience of someone who'd learned to wait for things that mattered. Finally, the teenager left. They were alone. You can't keep doing this, he said without looking at her. Doing what? Helping people? Buying me? I'm not buying you. I'm investing in your work. Same thing. Is it? She stood, walked over. She was taller than him by 2 inches, broader by more, and he hated that his hindbrain still registered her as dangerous even though she'd never threatened him. You're helping people within a broken system. I'm helping them outside the system. We want the same thing. No, we don't. You want control. I want community. Community without resources is just shared suffering. He finally looked at her. And resources without ethics is just exploitation. Then help me build ethics into it. She pulled a folder from her bag. I'm starting a foundation, legitimate, legal, for refugee support, trafficking survivors, foster youth. I want you to run it. He laughed, harsh and surprised. You're joking. Do I look like I joke? You look like you're trying to trap me. I'm trying to give you a $200,000 annual salary to do exactly what you're already doing, but with actual resources. Full control over programming. I provide funding and infrastructure. You provide direction and oversight. She set the folder on the desk. No strings. You can quit any time. But think about how many people you could help with real money instead of prayers and grant applications. He didn't touch the folder. Why me? Because you're the only person I trust not to become what I am. You don't trust me. You don't even know me anymore. I know you enough. You testified against your own father, destroyed your own legacy, chose kindness over power when everyone in your life was choosing the opposite. That's exactly who I need. What do you get out of this? She was quiet for a long moment. Redemption, maybe, or at least proximity to someone who still believes redemption is possible. He picked up the folder, didn't open it. This is manipulation. Yes. You're using my compassion against me. Yes. I should say no. You should. But you won't. Because you care about people more than you care about being right. She wasn't wrong. He hated her for it. Leave a comment telling me if Hyunwoo is right to resist or if he's being prideful when people's lives are at stake. Because what happens next is going to test everything both of them believe about power and protection. He said yes. Of course he said yes. Spent a week pretending he was still deciding. But they both knew from the moment she'd set that folder down that he'd take it. Started the foundation in January. The paperwork was immaculate. Completely legal. She'd hired lawyers who specialized in nonprofit compliance, accountants who could make money so clean it squeaked. The office was in Manhattan, modest but professional, with a staff of 5 people Hyunwoo interviewed and hired himself. His salary was deposited monthly into an account he could trace to legitimate investment returns from Imani's security consulting firm. Everything was clean. Everything was legal. Everything felt like a trap he'd walked into with open eyes. They met monthly for board meetings. Just the two of them because she'd structured the foundation so he had complete operational control and she was just the funding source. He'd present on programs, outcomes, budgets. She'd listen, ask sharp questions, approve everything he proposed, and never once try to influence his decisions. It should have felt like autonomy, felt like a leash made of trust instead of chain. By March, they'd helped 47 families. By May, 93. By August, the foundation had expanded to include job training, legal aid, mental health services, and a partnership with 3 other community organizations. Hyunwoo was working 16-hour days and sleeping better than he had in years because for the first time in his life, he was actually making a difference at scale. And he hated that Imani had given him that. Hated that her blood money was saving lives. Hated that he couldn't hate her. "You're killing yourself," she said in September, during a meeting where he presented quarterly outcomes with dark circles under his eyes and a tremor in his hands that wasn't from anxiety medication. "I'm fine." "You're not. When's the last time you ate?" "I ate." "When?" He couldn't remember. She stood, walked to her office door, spoke to someone outside. 10 minutes later, food arrived. Korean, home-style, the kind his mother used to make. She didn't ask if he wanted it. Just set it in front of him. "Eat. I'm not a child you need to feed through a fence anymore. No. You're an adult running himself into the ground because you think exhaustion equals virtue. Eat." He ate because he was hungry and it was there and she was right. Virtue didn't actually require martyrdom. "Why do you care?" he asked between bites. "If I exhaust myself? Because if you burn out, the foundation suffers. The families suffer. That's the only reason?" She looked at him for a long time. "No." "Then what?" "Because 15 years ago, you were the only person who saw me as human. And I don't know how to repay that except to keep seeing you the same way." Something in his chest cracked. "You repay it by not becoming my father. I'm not your father. You run a criminal empire. I run a business empire now. Legitimate. I've been transitioning for 18 months. The last of my questionable operations shut down in July." He set down his chopsticks. "Why?" "Because you were right. Power that requires violence is just fear wearing a suit. I wanted to build something different. You're doing this for me. I'm doing this for me. You're just the excuse I needed to finally admit what I was building wasn't worth the cost." They stared at each other across the desk. I still can't be what you want, he said quietly. What do you think I want? Marriage, partnership, whatever that promise meant to you. Maybe I just want you in my life, in any capacity you'll allow. Why? Because you taught me to survive, and I'm tired of just surviving. I want to know what living looks like. I think you know. He didn't know what to say to that. The moment hung between them, fragile and enormous. And then her phone rang. She glanced at it, frowned. I need to take this. He nodded, started gathering his things. Marcus is missing. He froze. Marcus, her second in command. The man who'd helped her find him, who ran her security operations. Missing how? My people found his apartment destroyed. Signs of struggle. This is a message. From who? Her face was stone. People who don't want me going legitimate. Who think I've gone soft. Are you soft? Not even a little. She stood. I need to handle this. We'll continue the board meeting next week. Imani. She stopped at the door. Let me help. This isn't your world anymore. It's your world. That makes it my problem. Why? Same question he'd asked. Because 15 years ago, you were the only person who saw me as human. And I don't know how to repay that except to keep seeing you the same way. She smiled. Small, surprised, painful. You're quoting me. I'm agreeing with you. Let me help. She studied him. This could get dangerous. I testified against a Korean crime lord who'd killed his own daughter. Dangerous isn't new. This is different. How? Because this time, if something happens to you, I won't be able to forgive myself. Then make sure nothing happens to me. She laughed. Actual laugh, short and sharp and almost happy. Okay, but you do exactly what I say. I thought you wanted me to have autonomy. In the foundation, in my life, you follow my lead. That's not how partnerships work. We're not partners. Then what are we? She didn't answer. What are Imani and Hyunwoo to each other? Drop your thoughts in the comments because the next part is where everything they've been avoiding finally crashes into them, and neither of them are ready for it. Marcus had been taken by an organization called the Red Phoenix Collective, Korean-American crime syndicate based in Brooklyn, mid-level operation that Imani had absorbed portions of when Kang Taemin's empire fractured. They'd been loyal until she started going legitimate, started shutting down the profitable but unethical operations, started acting like law mattered. They wanted the old ways back, wanted blood and fear, wanted to send a message by taking her second in command and making her choose. Violence or losing everything. Imani's remaining people wanted to hit them hard. Tactical assault. Overwhelm them. Get Marcus back through superior force. Standard operating procedure. How many casualties? Hyunwoo asked. They were in Imani's real office, not the public-facing security consulting one. This one was in a nondescript building in Queens. Reinforced doors, encrypted communications, the beating heart of an empire she claimed no longer existed. 6 of her people sat around a conference table covered in maps and surveillance photos. They all looked at him like he'd wandered into the wrong room. Excuse me? The one called Jean, her head of tactical operations, muscular Korean man in his 40s who looked like he'd killed people and would again. How many casualties? Hyunwoo repeated. Your assault plan. How many people die? Does it matter? They took Marcus. It matters if you want to be different than the people you're fighting. Jean looked at Imani. Who is this? Someone who sees options we don't, she said quietly. Answer his question. Jin's jaw tightened. Estimated 6 to 8 hostile casualties. Maybe more depending on resistance. Minimal on our side if we plan it right. Minimal meaning what? 2, 3 dead. Few more injured. Acceptable losses. Acceptable. Hyunwoo looked at Imani. Is that what you want? 6 to 8 people dead. I want Marcus back. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. No, it's not. He stood, walked to the map, studied it, saw patterns the way his father had taught him before he tried to forget everything his father had taught him. The Red Phoenix operates out of 3 locations in Brooklyn. Trafficking front in Sunset Park, Money laundering through a restaurant in Bay Ridge. Leadership meets in a private club in Borough Park. He pointed to each location. Marcus is probably here. The club. Because they want you to come for him. It's a trap. Obviously, Jean muttered. Hyun-woo ignored him. So you don't go. You make them come to you. How? You hit their money. The restaurant. Not with violence. With information. You have contacts in the IRS, Immigration Enforcement, Health Department. Amani nodded slowly. All three. Then you coordinate inspections. Shut down their restaurant legally. Freeze their accounts. Cut off their cash flow. Make them desperate. That takes days. Weeks. Marcus doesn't have that time. Then you accelerate it. You have enough evidence to warrant immediate action. I have everything. Health violations. Immigration fraud. Tax evasion. Enough to close them permanently. Then use it. Now. Tonight. By morning, their revenue stream is gone. By tomorrow afternoon, they're bleeding money. By tomorrow night, they're willing to negotiate. They won't negotiate. They'll kill Marcus to send a message. Not if you give them something they want more than revenge. Which is? Me. The room went silent. Amani stood. Absolutely not. Listen, they don't want Marcus. They want to prove you're weak. That going legitimate makes you vulnerable. So prove them wrong. You use legal pressure to destroy their operation. Then I walk in and offer them a deal. Marcus's life in exchange for immunity. They get to walk away instead of spending years in prison. They'll kill you. Not if I'm Kang Tae-min's son. That stopped everyone. You're what? Jean looked between them. He's lying. I'm not. I'm Kang Hyun-woo. I testified against my father 15 years ago. The Red Phoenix Collective knows that name. Knows that legacy. They won't kill me immediately. They'll want to talk. Want to understand why I'm helping her. And while they're talking, she gets Marcus out. I walk out through the front door with immunity papers and federal witnesses. Clean. Legal. Nobody dis. Amani was shaking her head. No. Absolutely no. You're not putting yourself at risk for my second-in-command. Why not? You've been putting yourself at risk for me for 15 years. That's different. How? Because I love you. The room went impossibly quiet. Amani looked like she'd been shot. Like the words had come out without permission and now they were just hanging there, bleeding truth into expensive carpet. Hyun-woo couldn't breathe. You what? I love you. I've loved you since I was 9 years old and starving, and you were the only person who saw me. I built an empire to be strong enough to deserve you. I'm dismantling that empire because you asked me to be different. Everything I've done for 15 years has been about keeping a promise to someone who taught me I mattered. So no, you don't get to walk into a trap and die for my mistakes. She was crying now. Amani Williams, the architect, the woman who commanded fear like language, crying in front of her people. I can't lose you again. Hyun-woo walked around the table, stood in front of her. She was taller, broader, more powerful in every measurable way. She looked up at him with tears on her face and something in him shattered. Then trust me, he said quietly. Trust that the boy who fed you through a fence knows how to survive. Trust that I can do this. I don't want you to survive. I want you safe. Same thing. It's really not. He reached up, touched her face. First time he'd ever touched her as an adult. Her skin was warm, damp with tears, and she closed her eyes like the contact hurt. If I do this, if I walk in there and get Marcus out without anyone dying, will you finally believe that power and violence aren't the same thing? And if they kill you? Then you were right. Power is the only thing that matters. But I don't think they'll kill me. I think they'll listen. Because I have something they want. What? A name. A legacy. And information about how my father built his empire. Information that's worth more than revenge. Amani opened her eyes. Looked at him like she was trying to memorize his face in case this was the last time she'd see it. I hate this plan. I know. If you die, I'm burning their whole organization to the ground. I know that too. And then I'm finding a way to bring you back just so I can kill you myself. He smiled. That's fair. She kissed him. Sudden, desperate, tasting like salt and fear and 15 years of wanting. It lasted 3 seconds. When she pulled back, her eyes were fierce. You do exactly what I tell you. Exactly. No improvising. No heroics. You follow my tactical plan to the letter or I call this off. Okay. You wear the equipment my people give you. You keep communications open. You don't take risks. Okay. And Hyun-woo. He waited. Come back to me. Because I'm not done being in love with you yet. His throat was too tight to answer. He just nodded. Tell me in the comments if you think Hyun-woo's plan will work or if Imani should have stopped him. Because what happens next is where everything they've built together either survives or dies. The plan worked perfectly right up until it didn't. Imani's people hit the restaurant at midnight. Coordinated raid involving ICE, IRS, and NYC Health Department. They shut it down in 90 minutes. By 2 a.m., Red Phoenix's accounts were frozen. By 6 a.m., word had spread through Brooklyn's underworld that the architect was using legal warfare instead of bullets. By 9 a.m., the leadership was panicking. At 10 a.m., Hyun-woo walked into their club in Borough Park, wearing a wire so sophisticated it was embedded in his glasses. Imani's tactical team was positioned in 3 locations outside. Federal witnesses were on standby. The plan was simple. He'd offer immunity in exchange for Marcus. They'd either accept or they wouldn't. If they didn't, Imani's people would move in, but only if there was imminent danger. The goal was 0 casualties. The club was exactly what he'd expected. Dark wood, expensive furniture, the smell of sigil and old money and older violence. For men sitting around a table. Marcus tied to a chair in the corner, bloodied but alive. The man at the head of the table was Park Jin-soo. 50s, scarred face, eyes like dead fish. He'd been Taemin's lieutenant before the empire fractured. Kong Hyun-woo, he said in Korean. The prodigal son. Mr. Park. Hyun-woo bowed slightly. I came to make a deal. You came to die. Maybe, but you'll want to hear the deal first. I'm listening. You release Marcus. In exchange, I offer you immunity from prosecution for this kidnapping. The federal witnesses outside disappear. The charges for your restaurant get reduced to fines. You walk away. Park Jin-soo laughed. You think you have that power? I have connections you need. My father's contacts in Seoul. Information about operations your competitors would pay millions for. And I have the woman you're trying to intimidate willing to let you walk away if you do this clean. She's weak. She shut down your revenue stream in 6 hours using legal channels. That's not weakness. That's evolution. You can evolve with her or die fighting yesterday's war. Park stood, walked over to Marcus. Put a gun to his head. Or I kill him now. Kill you next. Send her a message that going legitimate was a mistake. Then you'll have federal witnesses, tactical teams, and the full weight of her organization coming down on you. Not with violence. With legal pressure that will put you in prison for 20 years. Is your pride worth that? The gun didn't move. You testified against your father. Betrayed your own blood. Why should I trust anything you say? Because I'm offering you the same thing I gave myself. A chance to be someone different. To walk away instead of dying for someone else's empire. Your father would have killed you for this speech. My father is dead. And everyone who stayed loyal to his way of doing things died with him. You want to be next. The room was silent except for Marcus's breathing, harsh and wet, possibly punctured lung, and Hyun-woo's heart beating so loud he could hear it in his ears. Park Jin-soo studied him. You're nothing like him. I know. He would have shot me already, taken his man and burned this place down. I'm not my father, and that's why I'll survive longer than he did. Park lowered the gun. Get out. Take him. But tell your woman this isn't over. She wants to be legitimate? Fine. We'll come for her in courts, in business, in ways she can't fight with lawyers. That's fair. Competition is legal. This isn't competition. This is war. Then it's a war neither of us have to die in. Hyunwoo walked to Marcus, started cutting his restraints. His hands were shaking. Marcus could barely stand. Together they walked toward the door. Behind them, Park Jin-soo said, "Hyunwoo." He stopped. "Your father used to say power is the only language the world speaks. What do you say?" Hyunwoo looked back. "I say love is louder." He walked out. The tactical team was waiting. Got Marcus to an ambulance. Amani was there, and when she saw Hyunwoo alive, saw him walking toward her, saw that he'd actually done it, gotten Marcus out without anyone dying. She ran to him. Actually ran. Wrapped her arms around him so hard his ribs protested and buried her face in his shoulder. "You're alive. You're okay. I'm fine. We're fine. Marcus needs a hospital, but he'll make it." She pulled back just enough to see his face. "You're crying." He was. "I know. Why? Because for 15 years I've been running from my father's legacy. And today I finally used it for something that didn't destroy anyone." She kissed him again. Different this time. Not desperate. Certain. Like she'd finally found something she'd been looking for her whole life. When they pulled apart, her people were staring, but she didn't care. "Marry me," she said. "What?" "You heard me. Marry me. I kept my promise. I got strong. I found you. I became everything I needed to be to protect us. Now I want what I wanted when I was 9. I want you. Imani. I know. I know you don't want my empire. Don't want power. Don't want violence. So I'm giving it up. All of it. The foundation is legitimate. I'll make everything else legitimate too. I'll be whoever you need me to be." "That's not what I want." "Then what do you want?" "I want you to be yourself. The woman who survived trafficking in streets and every system designed to destroy her. The woman who built an empire because no one should be that powerless again. I don't want you to change. I just want you to grow." "Into what?" "Into someone who uses power to protect instead of to prove." "You're already halfway there." She was crying again. "Is that a yes?" "It's a give me time to figure out if I can be what you need. I don't need anything except you alive and in my life. Everything else we can figure out." "That's not how marriage works." "How would you know? Have you ever tried it?" He laughed. Actual laugh, surprised and genuine. "No." "Then let's figure it out together. Please. I've waited 15 years. I know. I'll wait longer if you need me to, but I love you. And I want to build something with you that isn't an empire or a foundation or anything except ours." Hyunwoo looked at her. This woman who'd been a starving child behind a fence, who'd survived things that should have killed her, who'd built something monstrous and then dismantled it piece by piece because he'd asked her to believe in a different way, who'd loved him steadily for 15 years without ever demanding he love her back, who'd kissed him like he was worth keeping promises for. "Okay," he said. "Okay. Yes, I'll marry you, but on one condition." "Anything." "We do it at Lincoln Elementary. At the fence where we met." She smiled through tears. "That's in Seoul." "I know. We'll go back together. Close that circle. Start a new one." "Okay. Yes. Anything you want. I want you, exactly as you are. With all your violence and all your tenderness and all your ridiculous plans to protect people who don't need protecting. You needed protecting today. So did you. We'll figure out how to protect each other." They stood there while Marcus was loaded into an ambulance, while her people secured the scene, while the sun rose over Brooklyn and painted everything gold. Two people who'd been destroyed by the same empire, who'd survived it differently, who'd found each other again and decided maybe survival wasn't enough. Maybe they could build something better. The wedding was 6 months later in Seoul. Small ceremony at Lincoln Elementary. They'd renovated the fence, turned it into a memorial garden for displaced children. Imani wore white. Hyunwoo wore his father's name one last time, introducing himself as Kang Hyunwoo before vowing to build something his father never could. A partnership built on choice instead of control. They honeymooned nowhere exotic. Just went back to New York, back to work, back to the foundation that was helping hundreds of families. Imani finished transitioning her entire operation to legitimate business. Took 2 years and cost her millions in lost revenue. But she did it. Became exactly what she'd promised. Powerful without being violent. 3 years later, they were in the foundation office when a girl walked in. 12 years old, Korean American, nervous. "I need help," she said in accented English. "My father he's hurting people. I don't know who else to tell." Imani and Hyun-woo looked at each other. "Sit down," Imani said gently. "Tell us everything." The girl talked. They listened, documented, reported through proper channels. Protected her when her father's people came looking. Used power to shield instead of destroy. And when it was over, when the girl was safe and her father was facing legal consequences and no one had died in the process, Imani and Hyun-woo sat in their office and looked at the wooden pendant she still wore, at the promise she'd kept in ways neither of them had expected. "We did it," she said. "Did what?" "Built something better than what destroyed us. Together. Together." They kissed. And somewhere in the city, another child was learning that power and violence weren't the same thing. That love could be louder than fear. That promises made by desperate children could grow into something worth keeping. If this story changed something in you, if you believe love can be louder than fear, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me what promise you're keeping or what empire you're dismantling to become who you're meant to be. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in stories about complicated love and second chances. I'll see you in the next one.